news. Today, a judge handed down the longest sentence so far in the Feeding Our Future fraud scandal. Amazingly, it's not the only major development in court. Turns out the $250 million estimate is only a drop in the bucket.
America, we just uncovered the biggest fraud scandal in U.S. history, and it's happening in Tim Walz's Minnesota. The acting U.S. attorney just confirmed that fraud investigations could exceed $1 billion. That's billions with a B. We're talking about the Feeding Our Future scheme that stole $250 million, autism centers billing $220 million in fraudulent Medicaid claims, and housing programs with the vast majority of $100 million in billing that was absolutely fake. But here's the kicker. 50 people have been convicted in just one case, with the ringleader getting up to 28 years in prison for trying to bribe a juror.
Federal prosecutors are calling it a milestone mark. 50 convictions have now played out in the Feeding Our Future fraud scheme. Tonight, we're digging deeper into these latest developments in this $250 million ruse.
What is up, guys? Tyson Dela Cruz here. Thank you so much for rocking with me. This story perfectly shows what happens when you elect weak Democrats who care more about looking compassionate than actually protecting taxpayer money. Let me break down just how massive this fraud case really is. Acting U.S. Attorney Joe Thompson told investigators he could expect a total scope of fraudulent use of taxpayer money exceeding $1 billion. When asked to describe that number, he said it's an extraordinary problem and fraud is pervasive in this state.
I think it is. Yeah, absolutely.
To me, that's astounding. How do you describe that?
It's an extraordinary problem and the fraud that's pervasive in this state.
If you haven't seen the video that I did a few weeks ago about Minnesota's fraud problem, you can check that out somewhere on the screen. Let's recap the fraud problem just a little bit. Here's how bad it is. In Minnesota, 1 out of 5 autism centers are currently under investigation. Think about that. 20% of autism treatment facilities in the state are suspected of fraud. Medicaid claims from 450 providers totaled $220 million last year. And Thompson says a vast majority of those claims are fraudulent.
In Minnesota, 1 out of 5 autism centers are currently under investigation. Medicaid claims from 450 providers totaled $220 million last year.
And in the Housing Stabilization Service investigation, billing reached over $100 million, with Thompson saying the vast majority of those claims, again, are fraudulent. These aren't isolated incidents. This is a systematic looting of taxpayer money. You know what else is wild? While we're talking about criminals stealing hundreds of millions of dollars from the government and healthcare programs, there is another healthcare system where people are getting taken advantage of all the time: Medicare. If you're 65 or older, you've probably dealt with people trying to game the system or push you towards plans that benefit them, not you. This is exactly why Chapter is different. Unlike Minnesota fraudsters who exploit government programs, Chapter connects you with trusted advisors who actually work for your benefit, not the insurance companies. No scams. They won't push you towards expensive plans that make them more money. Just honest guidance to help you find the right Medicare coverage that actually protects you. What makes Chapter trustworthy is complete transparency. Their advisors take the time to understand your situation, explain all your options honestly, and help you make the right choice. Whether you're new to Medicare or thinking about switching plans, they'll give you real facts without any games. If you want someone who actually protects you instead of ripping you off like these Minnesota criminals, call 270-467-0614 or go to askchapter.org/Tyson. That's askchapter.org/Tyson. Don't let anyone scam you. Get honest help you can trust. Now back to the massive convictions. The Feeding Our Future case alone has now reached over 50 convictions out of 70 people charged. This was supposed to be a program feeding children during C-19, but instead became the largest pandemic fraud scheme in the country.
This pandemic-era scheme was tied to an expanded USDA program that allowed restaurants to run federally funded food distribution sites for children in need. The restaurants needed to have a nonprofit organization as a sponsor, aka Feeding Our Future.
The ringleader, Aziza Farah, just got the longest sentence so far, 28 years in prison. But get this, he's also convicted of trying to bribe a juror during his trial. This guy was so desperate to avoid the consequences that he tried to corrupt the justice system itself.
As the ringleader in a group that stole nearly $50 million and the mastermind behind the plot to bribe a juror in his trial, 36-year-old Abdiaziz Farah is one of the most prolific fraudsters in the Feeding Our Future case.
Farah claimed to be serving 18 million meals to children, at first out of his tiny Empire Cuisine and Market in Spokane. Eventually, he was making absurd claims like serving kids in big open fields to the tune of nearly $50 million. The people in this case weren't just stealing, they were laundering money abroad, building apartment complexes with stolen American taxpayer dollars.
People in this case not only took tens of millions of dollars, but laundered much of it abroad and sent much of it to Kenya, among other things. They were building an entire apartment building in Nairobi.
The fraud wasn't limited to the Twin Cities either. It spread across Minnesota. In Rochester, Bravo Restaurant claimed it served anywhere from 2,000 to 3,000 daily meals to children under the Feeding Our Future program. 4 individuals connected to Bravo have pled guilty and been convicted on federal charges.
Rochester's Bravo Restaurant claimed it was serving between 2,000 and 3,000 daily meals to children under the guise of Feeding Our Future. The 4 individuals listed on your screen have since pleaded guilty to their respective involvement.
According to court records, Bravo received approximately $4.3 million in fraudulent funds. They admitted to using the federal dollars meant for feeding hungry children to pay for personal expenses. This money was supposed to help kids during the pandemic, and these criminals used it like their own personal piggy bank.
They admitted to using the federal dollars to pay for personal expenses. According to court records, Bravo received approximately $4.3 million.
The total losses in the Feeding Our Future case alone will now exceed over $300 million, possibly over $400 million. The original $250 million estimated only covered fraud through the Feeding Our Futures nonprofit. But Farhar's grouped with a different sponsor called Partners in Nutrition, and no one from the partners have been charged yet. Here's what makes this even more infuriating. The state knew this was happening and did nothing to stop it. A 2024 special report in the State Office of Legislative Audit concluded that MDE's inadequate oversight of Feeding Our Future created opportunities of fraud. The Minnesota Department of Education was responsible for overseeing C-19 funds through the federal child nutrition program, and they completely failed. They created opportunities for fraud through inadequate oversight, and now taxpayers are paying the price. Republican lawmakers are demanding answers from Governor Tim Walz. 4 GOP lawmakers sent letters asking 2 big questions. How was all this fraud able to happen in Minnesota, and what is being done to make sure that this doesn't continue?
First, how was all of this fraud able to happen here in the state of Minnesota? Another big question they want the answer to is what is being done to make sure that this fraud does not continue to go on.
The letter was signed by Congressman Tom Emmer and Brad Finstead, Representative Pete Stuber, and Congresswoman Michelle Fischbach. They pointed out as Minnesota faces a projected $6 billion deficit, this continued pattern of fraud is completely unacceptable. When reporters tried to get an interview with Governor Tampon Tim about the billion-dollar fraud crisis, guess what? He declined. His spokesperson gave a weak statement saying the governor has pushed the state to stay one step ahead of the criminals who attempt to take advantage of state services. One step ahead. They're not even in the same zip code as these criminals. 1 out of 5 autism centers under investigation, $220 million in fraudulent Medicaid claims, $100 million in fake housing program billing. This isn't staying ahead of criminals. This is getting completely outplayed by them. Taxpayers are rightfully outraged. One person said, "I think this has been going on for too long. We need to see where the money has been sent." Taxpayers pay a lot. They work hard. They want to see where their money is going. I agree with that.
I think this has been going on too long, and we need to see where this money is being sent. Taxpayers pay a lot, they work hard. They want to see where their money is going.
Another taxpayer asked a key question. Just makes me sad and frustrated. And now the big question is, how are they going to get all this money back? And where did it all go? America, this Minnesota fraud case is exactly what happens when you elect weak Democrats who prioritize looking compassionate over actually protecting American taxpayers. Tim Walz created a system where criminals can loot $1 billion in taxpayer funds while he looked the other way. 1 out of 5 autism centers under investigation, hundreds of millions of dollars in fraudulent Medicaid claims and housing claims, and a feeding program that became the largest pandemic fraud in U.S. history. The feds have recovered $60 million from the Feeding Our Future scheme, but honestly, that's just a drop in the bucket compared to the total losses. Most of the money is gone forever, sent to Kenya to build apartment buildings, spent on luxury cars and personal expenses, or hidden offshore accounts. This is is what happens when you elect politicians who care more about virtue signaling than actual governing. Walz's inadequate oversight didn't just create opportunity for fraud, it created a criminal paradise where stealing taxpayer money was easier than running a legitimate business. The good news is federal prosecutors are finally holding these criminals accountable. 50 convictions and counting, and the ringleader getting 28 years in prison. But the damage is already done. $1 billion in taxpayer money stolen while Tim Walz was asleep at the wheel. I'll keep you updated as more convictions come down and more fraud is uncovered. And remember, this is what happens when you elect Democrats who think government oversight is optional. Let me know what you guys think about this. Drop it down in the comment section down below. Smash the like button if you kindly would. Share, subscribe, and as always, guys, I'll catch you on the next one.